Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times. Welcome to my channel, welcome back to a little bit of Surviving Mars for our totally way too in-depth series. So, we're continuing to keep the game on pause here, and we're finally going to get into the nit and gritty of actually building stuff in this game just a little bit here. So, we can bring up the menu by right-clicking and it brings up our options screen for what we can build. Now let's go briefly over what we can build here. First of all, we've got drone hubs. Essentially, you cannot build this at the start of the game, but you will be able to learn how to build everything sort of in the everything later. So what we're going to see here is the drone hub. This building allows you to use workers. It also comes with a small number of them. You can ship it from Earth. It's the way that you're going to be doing it for quite some time into the game. The recharge station, this automatically recharges drones that sort of decide to walk out over it. Unless you have extreme drone traffic, you're not going to need recharge stations. The drone hub does come with its own recharge stations, so it will fulfill that role for you. You can also use an RC rover on top of a power cable that will also recharge your drones. So the recharge station is never really that necessary. Sensor towers, these things are used to detect incoming meteorites. They'll tell you a little bit ahead of time, and also it increases the speed at which you'll be able to scan areas around you. I don't find this to be super necessary, but depending on how you're playing the game, it might be more important or less important for you. A landing pad, this is a new feature to the game. It makes it basically so that you can launch rockets without having them destroy things. Normally what happens when your rockets land and take off, they kick up this massive amount of dust, and dust in this game causes buildings to break down a lot faster. Tunnels are used to connect areas along the map here. We can take a sort of brief look here. If I wanted to have a big jump down into this sort of area here and not have cables running sort of through these narrow gaps, I could use a tunnel for that. There's also some maps with massive elevation differences. The only way to move from one major elevation change to another is with the tunnels, so they're quite useful for that. They also carry power cables and other utilities, so they're a good way as well if you want to have an underground, less maintenance-heavy water cable across a long distance, because water cables and power cables break down quite frequently. Next up is the salvage button. That just is not a building, obviously. That just allows you to mark things in a sort of way here and delete all of them, basically. Next up, we got power options. This regular solar panel, these are incredibly cheap, but they don't produce very much electricity. By contrast, there's the larger solar panel. Now, there's a difference in terms of production and trade-off here. So the small solar panel, you can build sort of 4 of them, sorry, for the cost of one large solar panel, but 4 of these does take up twice as much maintenance as a large solar panel. Maintenance is what's going to kill you in this game. It's the constant depletion of your resources and your workers to constantly be maintaining your buildings and repairing everything. So if you want, you can have essentially 4 solar panels for the cost of one large solar panel, but it costs twice as much. Now, it does produce 8 electricity by comparison to 5, so again, it's lots of little bits of trade-offs there. Generally speaking, we're going to be using the large solar panel. Now, you'll note as well with the ingredients that we need for other things, you might not be able to actually build other options here. You can take a look, for example, at the power accumulator. This is a battery, basically. It requires 3 concrete, and we don't have any of that. We could have started off with a little bit of concrete if we wanted to, but we've got a concrete patch right here, so that's not really necessary. Same thing for the wind turbine. It costs 4 concrete to build this, so we won't be able to build this right off the bat. It also takes machine parts. Now, you'll notice that the maintenance cost for this is half that of the large solar panel, but it uses a more advanced resource. So there's the trade-off for these ones. I do find that they're a little bit better. They do produce at night as well, so you're going to be able to get more electricity out of these things. The Stirling generator here, you can see that we can't actually build it, but they are quite a bit more powerful than the others. They take up less room. They're a very, very good power source. Power cables, these are going to be necessary for you to do a lot of different things. They require quite a lot of maintenance though, so you're not going to want to stretch power cables everywhere, even though they're quite cheap, because you're going to end up paying a fortune on fixing up malfunctioning power cables. Power switches, what I use these for is isolating sections of power accumulators so that they can charge up during whatever period, and then I've got an emergency reserve of battery power, which is not going to be used unless something really bad happens, because sometimes they fluctuate during the day and night cycles. Next up, we got production. This is the concrete extractor. It's the first building that you're realistically going to need to build. It allows you to extract concrete. In fact, all of these basically just extract some sort of resource from the ground there. So you can see here the metal extractor. This is for, I don't think I've got any on the map right now. There's metal deposits. They're red bars. They'll allow you to acquire that with the help of miners. This is the rare metals extractor. It does the same thing but for rare metals, so you do need separate types for different types of resources. Even if it's both metals. You'd think that you'd be able to do the same thing, but no. These are the different factories. The fuel refinery is the one that we're going to need at the start there and does not require human workers. The concrete extractor and the fuel refinery both do not need human workers. All of the other ones do. The polymer factory is the one that's going to be cheapest. It requires just water, and you don't have to build it inside your domes, making it a little bit more cost effective to actually have polymer factories, and it makes it a lot easier to operate them, but the people don't like working outside. Electronics factory, this is going to be the last one you build because it's very expensive and the resources required to build electronics are quite expensive anyway, so you're going to have a much harder time building electronics from these buildings. Machine parts factory, they have to require metal. You're going to be using quite a lot of machine parts, so you are going to want to put one of those up relatively soon. Next up, we got life support. Moxie, this produces oxygen. You need about one of these per dome, I find, depending on the size. Oxygen tank, this stores up oxygen just in case something happens to your pipes, like they're leaking or whatever. This can be used to sort of dump extra oxygen into the system to make sure that your people don't die. The water extractor, this is for ground water only. Moisture evaporator, again, we cannot build these, but we do have one in stock. These produce water without having to have the water from the ground there. Water tower, this is going to store up water so we can use it even if we've lost connections for whatever reason. Pipes, these things again break, but unlike with the electrical cables, these things break and leak water, so you really want to conserve the pipes where possible and not sort of spam them out too many places, because if you've got lots of extra pipes, they're going to burst and they're going to leak, costing you precious water. And oxygen. The oxygen is not as important because you could always just build more Moxie, but that's something you want to keep in mind. Pipe valves, you can use this to isolate pipe leaks, and it's quite important that you be able to do that. Hydroponics farm, this is the weakest type of farm, and we're almost always going to try and find a way to not build the hydroponics farm. It is a really terrible building, and it does not produce enough food in my opinion, so just try to avoid this one if possible. Storage is here. We got the universal depot. We got the different types of depots here. We can see the different varieties over here. Dumping site, this is just for waste rock, and this is a universal depot. This is just a very versatile one that you can dump anything onto. Quite handy things. Here's the type of dome that we start off with, and you can see that we start off with the ability to make ramps. So we basically can build a dome in the center of a bunch of other things and have people walk from one to the other. Then you've got the passage ramp. You can't normally travel over the passage, so drones and whatever have a difficult time with these things. They have to go over the ramps instead. So you want to space out a couple of these if you have things going back and forth a lot. Domes are where people are going to be living. You do need to actually have quite a few of these to sustain a large population, so you're going to be ending up building significant numbers of these, hopefully connecting up to passages. What you'll generally want is having alternations of like residential domes that are connected up to work domes and play domes and stuff like that, so that people have access to all the different services without having to... It's better if you specialize them. The problem is that early on in the game you're not going to be able to very easily. Next up, we got the different things you can put in there. Living quarters, basic housing, they're pretty good. We're going to be building apartments as well. You can see that it's got this icon. That means we know they exist, but we can't build them yet because we haven't researched it yet. But the living quarters, more comfortable, less people, more expensive, more people, less comfort. The nursery, living space for children. You're not going to have to worry about that for a little while, but still a good thing to have available. Playground, this is a place for little children to play. School, for them to gain perks. I find that this is actually quite useful, but you don't need to necessarily start with it. And research lab, this is a way to gain your research speed from citizens, so instead of just getting it from Sol, we'll also get it from research labs. Very powerful and useful effect to boost your tech rates. From here we can see the different amenities. These are things that people go to increase their happiness, and you can see that we've got all sorts of different things here, and you've got different service types there. You want to sort of spread it out. People are going to want different types of services, and if they can't get the type of service that they want, they're going to have a little bit of difficulty. Now, the infirmary is also interesting in that it reduces the comfort required for people to have children. This makes it much easier for you to increase the population of your domes, so having infirmaries is quite a good thing. Security station is the only one that does not do the same things the other ones. Security station just helps deal with renegades. It's not really that important until later, unless you've got the more renegades thing going on. Spires are special buildings that go in towers. Other than the oval dome, you only get one of these. And these are what makes it kind of interesting in terms of specializing your domes. For example, if I wanted to build a one with a whole ton of water requirements, I could build the water reclamation system and really cut that down in cost. If I'm doing one that's heavily residential, I might want an arcology there. There's a bunch that I haven't researched, so this is not the whole list there. These are parks. These are basically just a different type of the service, except the difference is that these things don't require workers. So they're quite an interesting and cheap way to sort of spruce up your place and to make it a little bit nicer without having to spend too much resources or too many people there. So I'll show you guys what we want to be doing right off the bat here. So the first thing, like I said, that we want to be building is actually the concrete extractor, and this is going to let us unlock and build a lot of our other stuff. You can ignore the fact that it says too far from working drone commander. That's not really necessary for us. So we're going to drop this down over here. After my scanning, I do know that there's water like up, down here, whatever. So we're going to build this. Actually, let's build this other direction here. This metal's in the way a little bit there. Alright, so you can see in the available resource on the right side bar, it's just sort of over here, that it will tell you how much is under that deposit. Got 401 if I go to this spot, so that's a pretty good spot there. And then we can go ahead and add a power cable. We are still doing this before we land. You can do that just fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I like to have this just 5 away so that it builds quite quickly and without taking too much resources. We're going to then drop a single of these large solar panels. This is just enough to operate this thing. And the reason that we're building just these 3 things right now is because if I build any more, what's going to happen is all of those drones are going to go off and do that other stuff without doing all the other work that has to be done. And this makes sure that this gets done really quickly. And there is one reason why we want this all done really quickly. We want to have at least 4 concrete accumulated before nightfall, and that will let us build a wind turbine, which means we'll be able to work the concrete during the night. And that's just going to speed up the process a little bit. You'll notice I was talking a lot about upkeep for our buildings, repair costs for our buildings, and this is where that really comes into play. I'm going to move this guy over here to research that. So this is our RC Explorer. We've only started off with the Explorer. Here's all of our little builder buddies. They're going to go off and they're going to start collecting metal off of these nodes here, and they're going to then transport it over to these different building things and make the things that I'm trying to get here. And it'll take them a little while before they figure out what they're supposed to do, but now you can see that they're still milling around just a little bit, but they'll get to it pretty quickly. Here we can see one of them has decided to go off and get metal. The others have all just sort of realized, hey, that guy's got a good idea. And yeah, 1 cable, 1 unit of metal. These guys carry sort of 1 unit at a time. So we do want this thing built up pretty quickly here. We do want this thing built up pretty quickly here. Now, before you go exploring the entire map here, you are going to want to note one thing about your RC Explorer or whatever type you've got here. You can see this little indicator here. This tells you how much battery is being drained here and how much is left, 91%. It drains quite a lot when it's doing these researches, so you want to be very careful about not letting it run out of batteries and just ending up out there, because then you need to get the RC Explorer, or RC Rover, to go refill it. Alright, so now we've got the core setup of these 3 things here. We're going to go ahead and augment our little setup here with a universal depot. And we're going to put it like back over here, I think, is a good spot for that. And we're also going to go ahead and extend our power cable out this way, another whatever. It doesn't matter anymore since whatever these guys are doing is no longer really that important to us. And we're going to queue up a wind turbine. We want this to build as soon as possible. So this thing's going to start scraping away at the ground and creating units of concrete. It's also going to create units of waste rock. So here's one of our units of concrete here. Let's go ahead and get a dumping site right behind it here. And we'll leave a gap here so that we can put a cable behind there if we have to for whatever reason. And we're going to see these little guys sort of dipping in and out and picking up this concrete. Now you'll recall that we had a bunch of prefab buildings. You can see that we now have a moisture evaporator, we now have a drone hub, and we should also have the fuel refinery. But we're not queuing up any of those, even though we could build them instantly. The reason we're doing this is because we don't have the electricity to build them anyway, so or use them anyway. So while we could build them, it wouldn't really help us any. So we want to get the concrete and we want to get everything built. Now, why am I not just building them and letting them idle or turning off the power? Well, the reason we're not doing that is because if you have a bunch of buildings built that you don't need and that you're not using, you're going to have to pay the maintenance cost for the buildings anyway. So it's much smarter for you to wait until you need them before you actually start building them. And this just sort of cuts down every little tiny bit of whatever. Alright, so we've scanned that thing, we've gained Earth-Mars Initiative, we now know that that's what's next there. There's another tech boost in here somewhere, so hopefully, actually, let's change the order of these a bit. I think I just wasted some research there, but that's okay. Now, I think we can also... I've done a second scan a lot of the times here, so I think we've got just enough to do that and then get home, so... Our other rocket is also almost on the way here, so that's good. And let's go ahead and get this other wind turbine. So this is basically what the early game looks like in terms of what you're building and what the different buildings all do. How to make it sort of work for you is going to depend a little bit on sort of what you're planning on doing, but this is a good solid startup no matter what your overall sort of plan of attack is. It doesn't matter sort of what you're doing. This is a great way to get your colony up and running and get everything sort of motoring along in one way or another. So we've got ourselves a core setup here, and we now have enough power to get the drone hub. You'll notice that our large solar panel is now producing 0 power because it's nighttime. We've managed to produce all of these other buildings here, though, despite that, and gotten all this concrete despite that, so... Alright, so technically it's unexplored sector. Let's go ahead and build this, I think, up here. I do want to have that built before our next thing actually touches down. And I think that's a good spot for it.
Research complete. Anomaly
Alright, we gained a lot more on this one. Oof, that was too close for comfort. Okay, so we've got a listing of drone heavy load. That's because there's lots of work for our drones to do. I'm going to wait till this shuttle thing is finished before I bother landing our thing down here. It's saying drone heavy load because they're moving all that waste rock in the landing zone area to that thing there.
Sector scanned.
That's all fine. Let's go ahead and build our drone hub. We're going to build it, I think, here. We can sort of just slip it in there. We're going to go ahead and continue building our power cable out. Actually, we can sort of go build our power cable down that way now, because I think we're going to be building it down towards this other concrete stockpile. And then we'll use the outside of this to build our some of our other stuff here. Alright, so we can use that. Go ahead and start building our moisture vaporator. I'm going to build that there, and we're going to build the fuel refinery right beside it. And then to actually get those guys to work, we have to go into life support and build ourselves some pipes. And we're just going to build the shortest length of pipe possible. And we're not going to worry too much right now about valves or anything like that, just because it's not super important for what we're doing here. The valves are very important for later, but honestly speaking, if we lose water now, it's not a huge deal. Alright, looks like we do still need a little bit more power. So that's a good time to add in one more of these. Oh, no, looks like they're working now. I guess it depends on whether the solar panel's up and running or not. Also, drones being recharged also drain a little bit of the battery, so... Alright, this thing's up and running. Let's go ahead and land our rocket.
Sector scanned. Anomaly found.
New anomaly found, okay. So this is a different type of anomaly. This one gives you new technologies discovered, so we'll go ahead and go to there. But yeah, just scan everything basically is my modus operandi. Basically everything in the game is worth scanning. So we're gonna go ahead and, oops, I forget how to transport route. I think we go to here, metals, and then down to here. Okay, so you don't have to do it that way. You can just collect the other way, but this way is kind of easier. I don't know, actually. Metal depot. There we go. Alright, and these guys are going to start unloading all the crap that was in there. We're going to start building fuel. One of the things we're going to want to do is prioritize one of your rockets so that it gets all the fuel while the other one sort of waits. And basically that's, yeah, the opening stages of building a base. Getting from your one solar panel to switching over to these guys. Once we get a colony up and running, it can actually be a better idea to have a bunch of the solar panels, because all your people are working during the day. They don't really work as much during the night. So it's a good idea at those points in time to then have access to other things. But alright, let's go ahead and activate Live from Mars. Let's get the transport optimization. I actually quite like that. Decommission protocol. I'm not getting a lot of the text that I really like to get early on, which is a bit unfortunate, but sometimes that is the way of things. We are getting the option to upgrade our Moxie Vaporator,
Anomaly analyzed.
It's hard for me to go into the text, really, without sort of discussing the fact that a lot of the ones I'm getting are kind of crap. Ooh, there we go. Okay, so we can skip that. Okay, we still need to do that. Yeah, so we basically gained... I think we only gained knowledge of that. God damn it, that was a really bad one. Oh no, these two things. So when we researched that little thing on the ground there, it told us about that new technology in the tree without actually researching it. That's basically what those do.
Scanned.
And it's actually
Anomaly
superbly important there. This is going to do the same thing. It's going to tell us more technologies. This one's going to be a breakthrough. Actually, no, I think this might be something else. This one's a random thing. This can be anything. So let's continue scanning a few of those things. Now, you'll notice I'm not really building very much right now. There's not honestly that much to build in this instance. Because we don't want to build Moxie. We're not going to be building a dome for quite a while until we've got a bunch of resources and things built up here. And we've got sufficient power and everything, and our infrastructure is good enough to sustain that. I'm going to go ahead and build out our power cables here, though, to here, and then we're going to have that loop around. And the reason you want your power cables to loop around is because if you've got malfunctioning cables, it provides a source of redundancy so that you don't get completely screwed over if one of your whatevers gets blocked. So let's see here. Oh, we do have more moisture vaporators. That's good. Did I get another fuel thing? I did not get another fuel thing. Could not remember what I got, so. Alright, we don't want to build those moisture vaporators yet either.
There's more to the barren environs of the red.
Okay, so we did gain some more things that we know about. Unfortunately, again, nothing that I really care about right now. Drone hub's good, but they're very expensive to build. You can see 12 metal, 8 electronics. The 8 electronics is what kills it. The autonomous sensors is interesting, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Okay, and we'll get you down to over here. Okay, and we'll go ahead and set up another one of these things. Let's get into this view here.
Sector scanned.
There we go. Alright, no resources there. Continue scanning everything around you. Just do the stuff around you, because you never know, you might find something that you'll be able to use pretty much immediately. But yeah, this is pretty close to everything that we're going to need for quite some time. I just need to get this thing fueled up here, which is going to take a while. The production per sol is quite low.
It was because
Technologies in the physics tree gain a 10% boost. So this is a nice event to get. Like I said, that sort of tree was from something that gives you random bonuses, doesn't really do anything specific. This one just makes it so that we go through that tech tree a little bit faster, which is quite powerful. Anyway, I think that's going to be everything for this set of the building. Yeah, everything's going pretty well for us right now. So, hope you found this episode enjoyable. And next time I'll show you what you need to set up before you build a dome. But yeah, in any event, hope you found this one enjoyable. And of course, as always, hope to see you guys all next time.